Actually, I think one of the most interesting commentary I read about it was actually by speechwriters. So Peggy Noonan, who was Reagan's speechwriter, had a very laudatory column op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal in which he said what a fantastic speech this was, because it had all the right words and it appealed to emotions in just the right way, and it gave the impression of good against nobility against evil. I mean, all the kinds of things that are standard in any totalitarian state or anyone else. Where when you try to mobilize the population to support your policies. I mean, obviously, his speech. I don't think Bush wrote any. I don't know whether he even understood the word. I don't even know. I'm not even sure he even knows what the word axis is referring to. Maybe not. But it's really irrelevant because whoever wrote the speech plainly things that are standard in any totalitarian state or anyone else, where when you try to mobilize the population to support your policies. I mean, obviously, his speech. I don't think Bush wrote any. I don't know whether he even understood the word. I don't even know. I'm not even sure he even knows what the word axis is referring to. Maybe not. But it's really irrelevant because whoever wrote the speech plainly didn't want to focus on, say, the Enron scandal. Okay, that wouldn't do. Or or the fact that they're using this window of opportunity to ram through programs that they know perfectly well the population is very strongly opposed to, but they can ram them through because if they get people to huddle under the umbrella of power and so on, they don't want to say that. I mean, any sensible speechwriter would know that. So what you want to do is strike heroic poses and, good against the evil, wipe evil out of the world, and so on and so forth. Yeah, that's the way you write speeches if you have total contempt for the population and for democracy. And you want people to just be obedient and submissive and not raise any questions and so on. So Peggy Noonan's right. That's the kind of writing that would appeal to people with a real totalitarian mentality. Hitler's speeches were kind of similar. Go back and take a look. I don't know if he had speechwriters, but I mean, it just comes natural if you're trying to control people. As to Iran, Iraq, and North Korea, I personally take all that seriously. Pardon?
It's not that easy.
It's not that easy. I mean, you don't want to do anything that will be costly, right? And this is to yourself, obviously. You want to just attack people who can't fight back. That's crucially important. Actually, that's official policy. It's when George Bush the first came in as president in 1989. Every incoming president has a review of the international security situation done by the CIA and DIA and all those guys. And they did one, and parts of it were leaked to the press. As far as I know, were reported only by a New York Times gossip columnist, Maureen Dowd, so maybe people didn't notice it. But it was interesting what was leaked. What was leaked was a section that talked about the kind of conflicts we might get engaged in. And those were conflicts with, their words were, much weaker enemies. Okay, that makes sense. You don't want to fight anybody who can shoot back. That's trivial. So in conflicts with much weaker enemies, they said we have to win decisively and rapidly because anything else would be embarrassing and political support would erode because they know that it's very thin. It's not like the early 60s. Lots changed in the last 40 years. I mean, Kennedy could bomb South Vietnam for years, with no protest. That's when Viet Cong terror was threatening the Western heartland, according to scholarship. But he could, and the reason people can write things like that is because there really wasn't any protest. I mean, it went on for years. The U.S. attacked South Vietnam for years, practically destroying the place before there was any protest. Well, that's changed. Country's gotten more civilized, thanks to lots of activism and organizing and protest, and you can't do that anymore. So now you have to win victories over much weaker enemies rapidly and decisively before political support erodes. And if you think about the wars in the 90s, that's what they are, rapid and decisive from far away. It's claimed constantly that this is because Americans don't want to accept casualties. Take a look at the polls. That's complete nonsense. People say, yeah, it's it's okay to have casualties in a decent war. So like if it's the Second World War, we don't like casualties, but we accept the importance of them. However, if you're an intellectual, you have to interpret the actual popular response as if it's unwillingness to accept casualties. You can't say people don't want to fight rotten wars of aggression and terrorism. That won't do. So what you have to say is people don't want to accept casualties. That's the so-called Vietnam syndrome, invented by the intellectual classes. Doesn't exist outside that. But they understand that it would be you're going to lose political support unless it's decisive and rapid. So that kind of war you can fight, but you're not going to fight a war against Iran that way. It's not going to be rapid and decisive. Furthermore, there's enormous international objection. Furthermore, I would imagine that people like Dick Cheney would strongly object. He and his cohorts are making an awful lot of money by profiting from deals with Iran and bringing Iraqi oil into the country and so on and so forth. So I just don't think that's in the cards. I mean, it's conceivable that they might attack North Korea. They can't fight back. And they might figure out some way to bomb Iraq. But these are tricky. In any event, there's no more reason to do it now than there was before September 11th. So in that respect, nothing has changed. If there were reasons against it then, the same reasons hold now. So my guess is this is just playing to the domestic audience, trying to divert them from things they ought to be concerned about.